Hello and welcome to everyone here at the Plazium Plaza and to our online audiences join us via live stream. Good morning. It is such an honor for me, Mumtaz Izzatul, to be here as your moderator for this seminar. Today, we are going to discuss a topic that many of us, or maybe our friends or even our children, may relate it to, the reading proficiency of mature students. As a foreign language learner myself, I have always enjoyed reading, especially novels. However, when it comes to academic texts as a college student, I often feel overwhelmed by the complexity of the material. Is it fascinating to explore why mature students experience this, and more importantly, how they can overcome it? We are very grateful to have an incredible speaker with us today, who will share her insights and research on this phenomenon. Let's give a warm welcome to Professor Lubna Meiviana, who will delve deeper into this topic and offer practical solutions based on her findings. But before we get started, I would like to read Professor Lubna's background first. She is a lecturer at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia and has been an expert in English education field for 10 years. Her focus research was on the upgrader students, one of which is the mature students or college students. What an insightful profile from Professor Lubna. Without any hesitation, let's give a warm welcome and applause to Professor Lubna. Thank you, Professor Lubna, for attending this seminar. It is such an honor for us to have you today.
Thanks to you too.
Alright, how are you feeling today? Attending this big seminar and bring your research here?
Well, it is such an honor for me to attend this seminar, and thank you everyone for having me here. I'm truly excited to share my findings about this topic in this seminar. As everyone knows, that reading proficiency is one of the most essential part of overall English skills, and in this seminar, you will hear and see from others' perspectives regarding the topic.
Alright, I can see that the audience here is eager to hear your presentation. So, Professor, are you prepared to begin right now?
Yes, certainly.
Very well, Professor. The stage is yours.
Alright, good morning, good people. I assume you already know my name from the CV. I'm Meiviana Firmansyah and I'm currently teaching at Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia in Bandung. Now, talking about reading proficiency, I want you guys to picture this. If you're given an interesting book, but you cannot quite read it well enough. Now imagine a teaching approach that changes that completely. Knowing the mature students nowadays lack of reading proficiency, wouldn't that be a good step? Speaking of this article, improving the reading proficiency of mature students through a task-based language teaching approach that will dive into the TBLT approach itself, I bet that you have already known what reading proficiency is. So what is reading proficiency? So reading proficiency is the ability to read and understand a text, which is an essential competency that is closely linked to the educational process. Next slide, please. And the research problem is the majority of students encounter difficulties in understanding reading materials and unable to write academically. This shows that the reading proficiency of mature students based on this research is low. So how do we address these challenges? Well, TBLT here is to connect this challenge and the success. TBLT is meant to improve students' reading proficiency. Therefore, this study aims to find the effect of TBLT itself and to know the perspectives of TBLT from the students. Next slide, please. And here's the methodology. This study used a quasi-experimental design with a mixed method combining both quantitative data and qualitative data, and it gathered 60 first-year general English students that were divided into 3 groups. Next slide, please. And here are the groups and the categories also. The first group is non-mature control groups. They were all under 25 and taught using traditional methods. And the second group is mature control group. They were all 25 or older and taught also using traditional methods. And the last group is mature experimental group. They were also 25 or older and taught using the TBLT approach. And for the data collection methods, there are 3 methods conducted, which are tests, including pre and post tests, semi-structured interviews, and observation inventory. For the first one, which is test, it was taken from the test of academic literacy levels, or TOEL, assessing reading proficiency through 6 sections, which are sentence reordering, vocabulary, verbal reasoning, interpreting visual comprehension, and grammar to text relation. The next method is semi-structured interviews. It was conducted by gathering students' opinions on the teaching approach, its advantages, disadvantages, potential improvements, and the roles of lecturers and students. In this method, 15 students from the experimental group were chosen to be interviewed. The students were chosen based on their pre-test course. And the third method, which is the last one, is observation inventory. The researcher observed intervention classes focusing on preparation, language use, participation, lesson presentation, classroom management, atmosphere, and technology use, with comments recorded on a checklist. And what we have in this slide is the findings of the study, which indicates that mature students participating in the TBLT intervention achieve higher scores compared to the other control groups, which indicates that the TBLT approach is effective to be implemented in the teaching process. And now let's jump into the conclusion. So, this study concludes by advocating the adoption of the TBLT approach as a practical and relevant pedagogical strategy to improve the reading skills of mature university students. This research not only adds to the existing literature on TBLT approach, but also emphasizes the necessity of contextualized learning method to address unique challenges faced by mature students.
Alright, give a big applause to Professor Lubna. Okay, what an insightful presentation from Professor Lubna. So it is true that this study highlights the significant impact of TBLT approach on improving reading proficiency of mature learners. These findings advocate for the adoption of TBLT approach as an effective pedagogical strategy to address the academic challenges faced by mature learners, emphasizing the importance of interactive and contextualized teaching methods in higher education. Okay, now we're moving on to our next agenda, the Q&A session. So for anyone who has any thought that might be unclear or confusing, you can ask away in this session. But before we get started, I would like to inform you about the Q&A procedure. So the person who wants to ask has to raise their hand first. And then the second one, I will choose and give permission for them to speak. And after being chosen, you may start asking the questions. Okay, so I want to ask first, Professor, do you prefer collecting all the questions first, or do you want to answer them one by one?
I think it is more effective to answer the question one by one.
Okay, we will start in 1, 2, 3. Raise your hands up. Alright. It seems like everyone here interested in this topic, right? You are the first askers. You may start ask your questions.
Alright, thank you for the opportunity, and first of all, thank you for the excellent explanation, Professor Lubna. I found your points about how TBLT benefits mature students practically insightful. However, I have a question related to the focus of the study. Why does this study specifically focus on mature students, and how might their needs differ compared to non-mature students? I believe understanding this distinction could give us a clear perspective and on the importance of tailoring teaching approaches to different students group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. So your question is why this research focuses on mature students and their different needs and can emphasize the importance of adaptive teaching approaches. So Professor, you can start to respond to the question now. Time is yours.
What's your name?
Syawalia.
Okay, so why is this research focuses on mature students? That is quite interesting. Well, this is because they face different difficulties compared to the non-mature students. And then, for example, many of them have left formal education for a long time. Therefore, they need a more collaborative approach in learning that is quite relevant to their life experiences. They also tend to respond better to flexible and supportive learning strategies.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. So it's more important to address the unique challenges major students face, and therefore a more collaborative and flexible approaches can make them more feel comfortable and supported in learning. Alright, is that clear enough, Khaira?
No, that was understandable. I agree with the collaborative and flexible approach that supports students in their learning. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we're going to the next question, the second question. We will start in 1, 2, 3. Raise your hands up. Okay, the second askers. You may start ask your questions.
First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity. That was such an excellent explanation and I learned a lot. So as you mentioned before that TBLT was shown to be effective, but I see that the students also met some challenges such as time limits and low peer participation. So I was wondering how feasible is it to use TBLT widely with these challenges? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. So your question is, how feasible is it to use a TBLT widely with these challenges? So Professor, you can start to respond to the questions now. Time is yours.
Yes, I think using TBLT more widely is feasible. But those challenges like time limits and low participation need to be tackled first. For the time issue, maybe tasks could be broken down into smaller parts to fit better into the class schedule. As for getting everyone involved, giving students clear roles in their groups could help because then everyone knows what they are responsible for. Also, using online tools might work to let students do their tasks outside of the class. Which would give them flexibility in learning. And I think regular feedback can keep students motivated and confident.
Alright, thank you, Professor. So to sum up, creating a positive and supportive environment is something that can help students feel more engaged and motivated. What an insightful question and answer. So, is the answer understandable?
Yes, very clear. So it is the environment itself, I reckon. Thank you very much.
Alright, now we're going to the third questions, and we will start in 1, 2, 3. Raise your hands up. Alright, the third askers, you may ask your question now.
Thank you for the opportunity, Professor Lubna. I'm interested in your talk, especially about your method in your research. Actually, right now I'm also doing a research about comparing students who enjoy reading comics and also reading fiction books. So, I wonder, how could you ensure that the control group receive the compared instruction, and what measures were taken to mitigate any potential biases?
Okay, thank you for the questions. So your question is how to ensure comparable instruction and mitigate biases in control group. Okay, then Professor, you may start to respond to the question now.
Okay, may I ask what's your name first?
My name is Windy.
Okay, Windy, so how to ensure comparable instruction and mitigate biases in the control group? So the control group was taught using traditional teaching methods that focuses on rote learning and independent assignments. To mitigate biases, the researchers ensured that both groups were taught by the same instructors and that the content covered was identical. allowing a clear evaluation on the TBLT intervention's effectiveness.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. So the control group used traditional teaching methods while both groups were taught by the same instructor with identical content to evaluate TBLT interventions effectiveness. Alright, is that clear enough?
So both groups were taught by the same instruction? That's understandable. Thank you.
Very well, and now we're going to the fourth questions, and we will start in 1, 2, 3, raise your hands up. Alright, the fourth askers, you may ask your question now.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. It is such an honor to have you in today's seminar. I found your presentation insightful and interesting, but I want to ask, in this modern era, in what ways can technology be effectively integrated to a TBLT approach to address the unique challenges faced by mature students in developing reading proficiency? Consider specific tools like strategies and practices that can enhance engagement, accessibility, and comprehension, while also taking into account potential barriers such as digital literacy and access to resources. Thank you.
Alright, thank you for the question. So if I may clarify, your question is how can technology in TBLT support mature students' reading skills by enhancing engagement and accessibility while addressing challenges like digital literacy and resource access. Alright then, Professor Lubna, you may answer the question now.
Okay, support mature students with engaging TBLT while addressing those challenges. So I must say yes, technology can significantly enhance TBLT for mature students by making reading more interactive and engaging. Tools like e-readers and applications such as Google Docs help students collaborate and engage deeply with text. While multimedia resources like videos and infographics make complex materials more accessible. To address challenges, we can offer technology training sessions to build digital literacy and provide offline materials or affordable tools for those with limited access.
Okay, thank you for explaining, Professor Lubna. So technology enhances TBLT for mature students by supporting collaboration. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, now we're going to the fifth questions. We will start in 1, 2, 3. Raise your hands up. Alright, the fifth askers, you may ask your question now.
Thank you, Professor Lubna, for your amazing presentation. That gives me a lot of insight and will be using in the future for us. But still, I want to ask you about the presentation before and the implication in the future, of course. So, how do mature students' perception of the TBLT approach compared to their experience with traditional teaching method? So that's all from me. Thank you in advance. Have a great day.
Okay, thank you for the question. So your question is, how do mature students' perception of TBLT compare to traditional methods, right? Okay, so Professor, you can start to respond to the question.
Okay, so mature students may perceive TBLT as a more engaging and effective method compared to the traditional ones, due to its real-life tasks and active participation. This method can improve their motivation and engagement as it often relates directly to their personal and professional experiences. However, there can be difficulties in implementing TBLT on mature students, such as their dependence on traditional methods and their resistance to new teaching styles, also the need for substantial support and resources to ensure effective integration.
Interesting. So even though they feel TBLT is more engaging than traditional teaching approach, there are still challenges implementing in these methods. Alright, is there anything more you want to say?
No, that was very understandable. Thank you.
Okay, so unfortunately, that last question marks the end of our Q&A session. Thank you to everyone who participated in our Q&A session. Your questions have enhanced a great impression for today's discussion. I would like to say a massive thank you to our speaker, Professor Lubna, for sharing her insightful presentation and responses. Your expertise on the reading proficiency of mature students has been informative. As we come to a close, I want to acknowledge each of the participants for taking the time to join us today. Your appearance and contribution have made this seminar a success and impressive. To improve this event, we expected to receive any feedbacks regarding our sessions. I would like to say thank you again, and we look forward to your appearance at future seminars and conference. Have a great day, everyone.